So, recap of what happened last Wednesday if you weren't here. I did a message, and the three things that I focused on was really, and when it comes to serving, kind of obvious but true, Jesus Christ was our perfect example of what it looked like to serve, not only the people around us, but the Father. Point number 2 that I pulled out is in order for us to have a successful ministry, in order for us to touch lives, we have to be abiding in Him. Apart from Him, we can't bear any fruit. And then the third thing was love. It all comes down to love. It says in the Word that you can have the faith to move mountains, you can have all kinds of miracle-working faith, but if the ministry and the things that you do aren't represented out of the love that you have for God, it profits us nothing. So as we jump in, I got stretched this week. I went over some of my notes with Pastor. We touched base, and he encouraged me to take one portion of Scripture and just really dive in and ask God, what do you want to show me through this Scripture today? And just really peel it apart. So if you have your Bibles on you, I want to encourage you to jump to Luke chapter 10, and we're going to go to verses 38 through 42, and I'll repeat that. Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42, and I'll give you guys a second. It will be on the screen up here, but it comes in 2 different sections. Tried to fit it all on one slide, but it did not happen. Boom, boom, boom. It's so funny to like ask people to open their Bibles, and I hear one person moving their pages, and everybody else is going like this. So weird. Isn't that crazy? If we're going to go touch... Good. Oh, you're multitasking. I like it. You're a true millennial. That's good. So, does anybody here need more time? Fred, do you need more time? No? You okay? Awesome. The story that we're going to go over today, probably most of us are familiar with this story. It's the story of Mary and Martha, and the way they served the Lord. There was 2 different people with 2 different reactions on how they served the Lord in that moment. So I'm going to start by reading this, and then what's on my heart today is I'm going to start asking you guys some questions, get some dialogue going. Sound good? Oh, thank you. I love it. All right, Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42. It says, now as they, talking about the disciples and followers of Christ, were on their way, Jesus entered a village. I'm reading now the ESV, by the way. And it says, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she and her sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. But Martha was distracted with much serving. And she went up to him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me here to serve alone? Tell her then to help me. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her. What an interesting word, huh? How many Marthas do we have in the room? I'm raising my hand too. We got some guys bold enough to tell. We got a couple more. I'll tell you what, if I had a bunch of people at my house, I would have a little bit of pressure to be a Martha, but I want to know about what you guys get out of that story, and some of it's on there perfect. What's grabbing your attention out of this story as we read it? Yeah. Yeah.
What is directed to us to say, hey, I am what's important.
Boom.
I see to it that all the rest falls into place, and I think Martha just didn't have that same faith. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that was the story. For me, it was.
Yeah, that's good. So it's like, okay, where's your attention going? Yeah, that's good. What else? What else? Go ahead.
I see the anxious and troubled that Martha saw that when Martha did her stuff out of being anxious
Yeah.
and troubled, and it's different, I guess, to do things and be at peace while you're doing them and
Right.
have not an anxious heart.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely good. That definitely caught my attention too. Go ahead, Bernadette.
How I look at it too is that
special because it was for Jesus.
That's a great point too.
You know, I
Yeah.
myself would have thought, oh my gosh, this is Jesus in my home. I want to have it extra special for him.
Yeah.
So that's how I would have looked at it.
Yeah, and if you guys couldn't hear in the back, Bernadette was saying, this is Jesus coming to my house. I'm going to make sure if you got the Son of God coming, word on the street is he's showing up to Bethany, and you're opening up your home to him. You want to make sure, oh my goodness, could you imagine? Hannah's parents came over to my house the other day, and one of like, hey, we'll be there in 5 minutes. I ran through my house, and I checked every little crevice. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, making sure everything's not crazy. Me and Hannah were on a boat the other day, and I took my underwear and my swimming shorts, and I threw them over my fence in my backyard to dry, and I forgot them there. And I walked out. Yeah, she's like, why are you sharing this? But I walked out, and I'm like, if I didn't walk out here and notice that this stuff was out here, I would have been so embarrassed. But for some reason, I can share that in a crowd. I don't understand. I'll go. Correct. Yeah, that's good. So if you couldn't hear Denny, what condition were they? What was the condition that he really cared about? The house or the condition of her heart and being prepared and ready to receive?
It says, that Martha was distracted.
Yeah.
Worrying about all the preparation, fixing the food, straightening things around.
Yeah.
And we can get into that real quick.
Sure.
But it's the people that we should be important.
That's good. Yeah.
And the fellowship. And it says towards the end here that Mary chose the best. But not only that she chose the best.
Yeah.
But she fully took it in, and nothing could take it away from her.
That's good. Yeah.
Sometimes we visit with people, but do we really hear what they're saying?
Yeah. That's good. I'm going to repeat that because you said a lot of times we visit people, but really, are we hearing what they're saying? Yeah.
And Jesus knew that Mary had heard, but not only had heard, but had taken it to her heart.
Yeah, that's good. So she not only heard, but she took it to her heart, which almost lines up with what we were going over on Sunday, receiving the word. We have it in our minds, but are we taking it and planting it in our heart, which is where the action's produced and the confidence to do it? That's good. Anybody else? You're a deep thinker back there. Come on. Anybody? Go ahead. Yeah.
Obviously Martha's the one serving, but when I read it, I think of, like Papa talked to me saying, Dan, if it's not this, it's going to be that.
Right. Right.
There's always the next thing. There's always the next job. There's always the next task.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
It's like God saying, hey, it's this, it's that, what's next?
Right.
Slow down.
That's so good. So just choose me. There's always something to do, especially if you're Harry Stroven and you got a farm to manage. There's always something to do. I'm learning that. There's always the pressure of doing a lot of things. I am surrounded by opportunity. I can be pressured. Even as a young guy interested in getting into ministry, the pressure of looking at other people around me, and it's like, oh, I have to push. I have to get myself to that place. And it's like, before long, I lose the grace, I lose the excitement. I lose the purpose and the point of why I'm doing it in the first place. It's like, okay, time to rewind. Time to get back to where we were going. Time to get in his will and his heart. Anybody else? This is good. Great answers. Was that a possible or was just a chin scratch? My teacher would call on everybody in school if we went for the ear. Go ahead, what do you got? No. That's good. So I wrote down some pros and cons to this story when it comes to Martha in this moment. I always remember, because I kind of get confused on which one's Mary and which one's Martha. So I think of Martha Stewart serving and cooking. And that's how I remember. It works. I promise. I've been going through for a week going, Martha. Yeah, that's it. So if I say them backwards, just remind me, Martha Stewart. Somebody yell it if I make a mistake. But when I first read this story, to be honest with you, I thought, oh my goodness. Why doesn't she? It seems so simple to me. Like, why doesn't she get that? She's got the Messiah at her house. And of course she's going to look, of course the Messiah is going to look at Mary and go, good job. Like, you're hanging out, you're spending time with me. But then I got the other option too that hit me like a ton of bricks. You got the Messiah showing up. Here's the cool, like the context of this. Luke 10 actually has the story of Jesus sending out 72 of his disciples and followers out to minister to the towns around the area. And they come back in Luke 10 as well. So the chances and the probability that her house was full with not only her sister and Jesus was probable. She probably had at least 70 to possibly over 100 people at her house when she invited Jesus to come in, because it's all his followers, the people with him in that moment, and then it's probably the followers of the followers, right? The people that are seeing, look at how many people Jesus attracted. He had thousands of people coming and following him. Just imagine the disciples probably collected a couple people, right, along the way. And then all of a sudden it's somebody at your doorstep, and he's got a crowd. You know what I mean? So some of the pros I wrote down is, for what I've seen is, Mary had a house in this story. She offered her home. You know what I mean? So you think, round of applause for Mary in this moment. That probably communicates that she's a responsible woman. She had a home to bring the people to. It doesn't say that Martha, or you know what I mean? Sorry, Martha was the one with the home. See, I got confused, but nobody shouted it. I knew it was going to happen. But it didn't communicate that Mary was the one with the home. It communicated that Martha had the home. And she was the one that said, hey, bring everybody on over. Love to have you guys here, which I thought was interesting. Also, the second thing I got is the 72 people showing up, possibly to 100 people or over 100. Another thing I wrote down was that Martha was kind enough to invite Jesus into the home. We would consider Martha to be the normal one, right? Nice. Hey, come on in. I'll cook. I'm going to round up the troops. I tell you what, when I come in here on Sundays, I'm not always walking around like, I'm not always serving the church with a smile and excited. A lot of the times, if you've seen me, I'm doing I'm going crisscross, bouncing back and forth to each ministry. Ginger's trying to say, hey, Taylor, how you doing? I'm like, hi, bye. It's time to go, which I thought was interesting. Martha was convinced she was doing the right thing in this passage, right? She tattled on her sister to Jesus, the Messiah, and said, hey, do you see what she's doing? Why don't you give her a word of encouragement and tell her to get off her rump and come help me? Somebody's got to get something done around here. And do you see all these people? They're hungry. We got stuff to do. Let's go. It's not time to sit around. This is the stuff that spoke to me. Darn well that Martha running through, she was dusting every crevice of that place probably. I know I would be at least. The curtains would be set out. The lamps would be straight. Everything would look nice. If they had lamps back then. That's a joke. At least in the context of what we're in. I would think that Martha would be the one that was not being selfish in that story when I read it, right? These are the cons that the pros that I'm going over in this moment. She's seeing the disciples come in. She's honoring the disciples. She's serving even at the inconvenience of her. How many times have you heard that? Oh, it's going to be an inconvenience, but just push through it. You can do it. So it's like, okay, let's do a heart check. But the cons we have is also in the Middle Eastern, like when it came to the Middle East, and I wrote this down, I did a little cultural context research and what it meant to serve in that moment. Basically, it was very, very similar to our culture today. If you were to serve somebody, let's say that me and Hannah were coming over to your house for a dinner. In our culture today, it would be like, awesome, we come in, you guys would, most people would straighten up. You do the whole kick the stuff under the bed, shut the closet doors, all that stuff. But in this culture, it was a step above that. In this culture, when you came over, if me and Hannah were coming over to your house, the way that we felt when we left was a mark on your family and your name. So it wasn't just, we're coming over for tea and crumpets, basically, right? It was, if this person, if they feel honored when they come in, if they feel like they were served, if they felt like they were cared for and loved and appreciated, then that means that it's a thumbs up for our family name. But if they leave and they feel like, wow, that didn't go so well, wish this would have happened, wish that would have happened, and you know what? Laundry everywhere, nothing looked right. Obviously, it's a dishonor because they didn't care enough to clean stuff up when I came over. Thumbs down. And that's a mark on your family name. People were afraid that in that culture, family name was huge. So that's just something that I caught on that drew my attention. I think it was funny that Jesus in this moment discerned her heart for what she was doing. And it doesn't really precisely tell, but we did get some stuff, and some of you guys mentioned they were doing it out of anxiety. They were doing it out of, oh, I feel the pressure to do this, or I need to do this. And it says that, but Jesus discerned her heart in this moment, and he was willing to call her out on it, right? It's just something to catch on to. I think it's really interesting that it makes me wonder, what did he catch on to besides the anxiety? She's pushing through. One of the notes that I took down in the cons is when the master's teaching, we're listening, right? But I wanted to just go over this. Like with last week, we talked about serving is a good thing, right? Most of us raised our hands in here and said, we're probably Marthas. We'd probably be the ones that are pushing through, trying to organize everything and make everything look spick and span. But in this moment, Jesus was looking for something different, because when he was teaching, when he was pouring out, the priority shifted, right? So we know to serve. We've heard that word often. Most of us have been in the church, so we have to share the gospel, show up, participate on Wednesday, help on a Wednesday or help on a Sunday, or what are you involved in? What ministry are you overlooking or helping in? So we have the understanding that it's serving. But the heart of it was completely different in Martha's perspective. It was completely different. Because, again, she was serving, and I think you were the one that said that. She was serving out of the anxiety and the pressure of the moment. Oh, I have everybody over. I need to do this right. Did you?
Well, I just wanted to share, too, that
Yeah.
probably a bunch of us in this room
Yeah.
have been servers and had people over at your house.
Oh, yeah.
And on a regular basis,
Mhm.
our house, for whatever reason, is the social hub.
Right.
And so you have those anxieties when people start coming into your house. But I can tell you that when I pray about our gathering prior to it happening, God blesses it every single time. And there are times that we don't always have our food all situated.
Yeah.
He makes it all come together so beautifully every time.
That's so good. That's so good, and it's true. He makes it come together. When me and Hannah and I did our wedding, the pressure, you got over 100 people that are probably going to show up. I can play the card like, oh, everybody's just here to just see us and have a good time. It's all. But realistically, when people leave, I want them to feel honored, right? I want them to feel like, hey, I went and I honored them by showing up, but they also honored me. And that's when you got that many people showing up, all of a sudden it matters. You know what I mean? I remember stressing out about the smallest things, like putting mints on the table. You know what I mean? How many mints do you put on there? What kind of mints? Do you do the cheap mints? Do you do the expensive mints? And then before long, it's like, okay, deep breath. Shh, back to reality. Mints don't care. Don't matter. But that's good. So we know that serving is a good thing. I wrote down the Son of God came not to be served, but to serve, which is what we went over. And Jesus taught this too. He said, you want to be great in the kingdom? Do you want to be great? Become a servant. Right? Which makes sense. I put that there's more than one way to serve him, though. This is the interesting thing. I put avoid setting the Lord's work as a priority over his presence, which really was interesting because doing the Lord's work really goes hand in hand with his presence. You know what I mean? If I have the pressure, like I said, well, it's my job. I work at Resonate. I'm the tech director or the youth director or whatever, and it's my job to do this. The pressure can build up. But realistically, the best ministry is done when we're hand in hand, when we're partnered. I'm partnered with God. I spent my time with him. I'm locked in, but I'm also understanding the purpose behind what I'm doing it. If I'm not doing it out of the right heart, I'm making a mistake. which is interesting because in the Old and the New Testament, it said that God, he doesn't need us. You know what I mean? In the sense of, he doesn't need to be served anything. But he is looking for people that are obedient and willing to share the gospel, be a vessel to perform miracles, signs, and wonders. So I thought that was interesting because one of the first point I made in this sermon today is that serving is a good thing, right? And feel free to throw stuff at me if you get anything. Oh, perfect. I'll read it right from here. Avoid setting the Lord's work as a priority over the Lord's presence. Yep. And I'll give you a second to write that down. They go hand in hand. So the best way that I could word this right now is realistically we have to realize that our value doesn't come from the things that we do. Whoa, I'm running around. Is Pastor Paul looking? Is he not looking? Does he care? Does anybody care? It comes from, my value comes from the Father because I'm his kid. I could come up here and I could preach that to you guys like I know it, like it's solid in my heart and I'm so confident in it, but I struggle with it so much. I do. And it sneaks up. The enemy likes to sneak up and just try to pull and throw punches when he can, but this is what I'm pushing through my head. And that's why I'm hoping that this will bless you guys, because realistically, there's two different people in this story. And one person focused in on Jesus and his presence. And could have been the lazy person. She was, her sister's trying to go, you're the lazy one, Look at her. She ain't doing nothing. But realistically, she was doing something. The way that she was serving was different than how her sister was serving. How many know that Martha's love language was probably acts of service? We're learning about that, right? You know what I mean? Love language is probably acts of service. One of the funny things is that we're doing this class over here with the 5 love languages, so if you're familiar with it, it's one of the things, like, when I do stuff for my wife, I stayed home this week on a Monday, and I just went through, I bought groceries, I cleaned up the house, I did all this stuff, and when she came over, she almost cried because I spent the whole day catching up on stuff that was stacking up throughout the month. She looked at me with those teary puppy dog eyes, like, thank you so much. And some people's love language is acts of service, but I also learned this. I also learned that mine is words of affirmation, so I enjoy when people come up, when you guys compliment or you tell me, hey, this one really, it's like, man, thank you. That actually meant a ton to me. But if I love her according to my love language, how much response am I going to get? Right. Because I didn't realize in the beginning of marriage that if I loved her according to my love language, it wasn't really doing anything. Because it was actually if you think about it, it's kind of a selfish way to love somebody. If you're going to go, I'm going to love you the way that I would want to be loved, and not the way that you want to be loved. Jesus was looking for a different demonstration in this moment. Does he tell us serve? I want you to, yes. He wants us to serve. But tuning our hearts in and realizing the time to listen to the Father, but also the time to serve the Father is a huge thing. If I spend more time focused in on, hey, I'm more concerned about doing ministry than I am hearing the Father's voice right now, I can tell you what, it ain't going to take long before I fall into all kinds of striving, depression, frustration in my ministry. And it happens very quick. I can always tell when I'm off balance, if you know what I mean. So serving is a good thing. Let's jump on. My second point here is don't let serving stop you from spending time at his feet. Such a huge thing to realize is Mary spent time investing and digging in and learning and being taught from Jesus. I think it's interesting. I went to a college where when I started, I was about 22, 23. And I started going, most of the people that start going to college are 18. I went to a biblical college up in Grand Rapids called North Point. And it's so funny because if you talk to the teenagers there or to the young people there, most of them are like, I'm ready to serve. I'm ready to change the world. Who are you going to be? Pastor, missionary, because now that's kind of a flashy thing in our culture. Missionary. They don't see the hard work that comes from being the missionary. Waking up, kicking cobras like Ron Mills was kicking at a cobra thinking it was, what kind of snake is that? Huh? There's a Bible verse about that. I love it. It's like, everybody wants to be high on the totem pole, right? And I believe there's a godly way to view that. Like, I want to make a huge difference for the kingdom, but there's also a different value from that. Everybody wants to change the world. But if you put them in a room, most of the people don't know much, and they don't know at all. And the scariest part is why I'm telling you this story is, most of the times when somebody did an altar call at my school, and it was about managing your time efficiently, and what I mean by that is spending time at his feet, the altar was full every single time. And the kids are weeping, and they're crying, because they want to change the world. I 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 want to change the world. But then when it came down to it, there's only so many people that are actually devoted to, I'm going to spend time at his feet. And in this moment, Mary in this story saw the value of sitting at Jesus' feet. And yes, there's people running around like crazy. Sometimes I think that this story could be compared to the thoughts that run through our mind. You know what I mean? We feel like we have 100 things going on running through our mind. Or it feels like there's 100 people over in our mind. You know what I mean? And they're all hungry. But realistically, are we able to focus in and just sit at his feet? Is this okay with you guys? Okay. Yeah, this is stuff that's just, I feel like is from my heart. One of the quotes that I had written down here is, fixing our heart and engaging our affections towards him. That is a challenge. That is a challenge. One of the things that I've been doing, it's kind of dorky, but I'm not worried about you guys judging me. We're a church, right? Nobody judges each other. One of the dorky things I've been doing is I've been taking my moped that I bought for $250, and I've been driving around Newaygo, just up and down by Hess Lake and stuff, going through the city, going by this park down here, branch, all over the place. And I've been just praying and spending time. I talk to the Lord. I pray about stuff going on. When I start to get anxiety, it's time for a scooter ride. You know what I mean? I don't care if people are passing me. I enjoy it. It's just something to get away. The gas is cheap and I can zone out. And it was so cool. Just by the time I got done, I've been praying over houses. I'm passing them. I'm praying that the people in this community would come to know Jesus, that they would be able to experience him authentically, that they wouldn't be under the pressure of the performance. Because how many here know? I spent time thinking, okay, I'm being judged by my ability to perform in this moment. It's the culture we grow up in, right? The people that are idolized in this culture are the ones that can perform the best. But Jesus said the servants, the ones on the bottom of the list, are the ones that are on the top of the kingdom. That's hard. That challenges me. Because now it's not now the priority is, what do I look like in his eyes? How am I serving him out of a passion and a love? How am I doing ministry? Instead of, what can I do to be better than this minister? Or how can I preach and get more people won to Christ than this person? Or how can I have the pressure to do this, and this? I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I look at like Todd White or Bill Johnson or Stephen Furtick, and I look at all these pastors and these preachers, and I'm thinking, hokey smokes. Like I look back, and people, you guys will come up to me and encourage me and shake my hand. Oh, good. But then when I look back at these guys, I'm like, I have so far to go. That's what I feel like. It's like, Lord, are you even working in me right now? I mean, and it's hard because the goal isn't to compare ourselves to the people around us, because it's not where our value comes from. Our value has to come through the Father. Am I being obedient to what he's teaching me? Remember last week, am I abiding in the vine? Because if I'm not abiding in the vine, then there's no fruit in my ministry. There's no fruit in what's going on around me. I was talking to a parent that goes to our church, and they had the pressure because one of their youth are in our group, or used to be in our youth group. And the pressure of, I've just got to make sure I do this, and I got to make sure I speak the right word, and I got to make, and I hope I'm being a good example for my kid, and I hope I do. And she had the pressure because she's worried about the future of her kid, and her kid was starting to make some poor decisions. And she's feeling pressured as a parent. And so for me, it was, hey, what is he speaking to you in that moment? Because there's a difference between what you're striving to do and what you think is right, but compared to the little things. I've seen the little things make a kingdom difference in a reaction. Go ahead.
One thing Rose tells me, because I just became born again here in May.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
my son, you know, he'll be 17 on Saturday.
Yeah.
And he's a gamer, you know, he's all about the PS4. And you know, you hear that language and the this and the that, and Rose, you know, and you know, right after you come born, you know, you think, well, at least my thinking, my way of thinking is, I gotta be perfect. I don't read my Bible.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And then when you fall, or when you know, you spew some things, you know, that you're
What? You did that? Oh my gosh. I'm kidding.
you know, and Rose got telling me, you know, she's like my rock. She says, you know, just let your light shine.
Yeah.
And he's gonna see that. And one Sunday I got up before church and I got on my bus because of the laziness, you know. And you need to get this done, and I told you a couple days ago, and I want it done. And he looked at me and he said, Mom, you need to go somewhere. And I looked at him and I said, excuse me? What did you just say? And he said, I said, what are you talking about? He says, you need to go to church.
Oh gosh.
I mean, just, you know, and I just started, I haven't been here in like a month, and I miss you guys and everybody.
Yeah,
here
good.
so
Welcome back.
And you know, and I was telling Rose, and I'm like, she said, you know, when she hired me, I said, I told her I want to go to church on Sunday, and she scheduled me, and it was driving me crazy. And,
Yeah.
and so I, you know, and I was telling her about, you know, some people at work with bad attitudes or this or that. And
Mm-hmm.
you just pray for them and let your light shine, and don't let them get you down. And I'm like, I can do that, you know. It's like, you know, it's almost like what you're saying. Sometimes you're looking at this mountain. in
Sure.
front of you.
Yeah.
Instead of looking at that mountain, man, just take it a rock at a time.
So let me repeat that because that was really good. And instead of looking at the mountain of all the things that need to change. I mean, the standard and what I taught about last week was the Holy Spirit's the carbon copy that Jesus Christ is the copy that the Holy Spirit works from in our life, right? That is the image he's working in. He's taking in our personalities and the differences that we have, but he's building us up, and it's going to be a beautiful work that he does and he continues to do. But that's good because when we look at the mountain of all the things we need to change, and it's like, oh my goodness, we need God's grace in this moment. We have to realize that it can be. And that's the pressure of when I start to feel that overwhelming pressure, like you're talking about, I have to go, okay, am I trusting in my ability? Am I being the Jesus Christ, right, of my family? And I start feeling that pressure. Am I trusting God to be able to come through? Because you got grace, girl. You do. You do. Because he's given us the grace. When every action is hindered on what we do right and wrong, what a pressure that can collect. Go ahead. Sure. Mm. Yeah. Surpasses all understanding, yeah. 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 That is so good. And think about this. Matthew 6:33, which lines up with exactly what you're saying. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and then what happens? All other things will be added. What a challenging verse. Maybe it's just me. That's a challenging verse. You know what I mean? Because what is this? We grew up in a culture that frets about their status. Just like, what's my family status? Like we're sharing in the story, we grew up in a culture, financial, what's going to happen with my finances? When the scripture says even the birds are taken care of, Jesus like, if God's taking care of the birds, how much more is he going to take care of his kids? You know what I mean? But we can walk around stressing. Am I making the right decisions? Am I doing the right things? But realistically, there's a God that's in control. He's in charge. He's doing a really good job. You know what I mean? So the times that we blow it, it's okay. Because he will redeem those situations when we choose to put our trust in him. Do the mistakes hurt? Can they cause some learning curves? Oh, sure they will. And those do happen. But let me tell you what, I've seen God redeem situations, and those little things like we're talking about, the little things, the little acts of obedience of just abiding in him make a kingdom difference and can restore what was lost.
I was just going to say, he got in my face tonight. I was with myself over whether I was going to come tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, I really am tired and I don't want to come.
Yeah.
I don't want to take the time to drive the 16 miles.
Yeah.
And I heard him say, what if I didn't have time for you?
Yeah. And he said it in the most loving way, and you knew his heart behind it. But yeah, isn't that good?
Yeah.
Our flesh doesn't like to serve God. It doesn't. Our spirit loves it. And we get our peace, and we start overflowing in the love, joy, peace, patience, all that stuff. But man, that's a thank you for sharing that. That was super good. Anybody else? That was good. So the point that I'm hitting home on this thing is we have to take time. We have to take time and sit at his feet. We have to take time. What you got, honey?
Because in our society says, like a servant is someone who goes out and does things for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Go do this for me. Go do this for me. But God doesn't say do things for me. God says come do things with me.
Right.
Of course, of his presence. You can't serve without his presence because he says, I want you to do things with me.
Right. Exactly. Gives us the Holy Spirit who's going on the journey with us, who's faithful enough to stay with us through I don't know about you guys, but I've made some stupid decisions. I don't know about you guys, but I suffer sometimes with being lazy. Sometimes I don't want to drive to church. I'm with you. Sometimes my bed feels way too good. Sometimes it's like, I just need a break. But we have a God that partners with us. So one of the notes that I took down and what I love is what I was kind of thinking of is, listen to this. I put, serve like Martha, but not out of anxiety or pressure, but love. Love. But also be like Mary and learn to sit at the feet of Jesus. Learn to take that time. Because it's amazing. As somebody that wants to be in ministry, I can pick up 100 books from Stephen Furtick, Bill John. I can read all these books, but nothing beats time well spent when it's with him. That is where he communicates it very clearly. Even this week, over the weekend, we just had a day back to back to back to back, things going on. I'm running all over the place. She's running all over the place with me, and I'm feeling pressured and bogged down. Well, let me tell you what, the minute, it took 5 minutes when I got alone and I spent time with him and just got with him. The difference that it made was astronomical. I felt like a completely different person, even though I'd been carrying around the pressure of running all over the place the whole weekend. The minute I took a second and just hung out with him. Complete difference in everything going on. Do you guys have anything else? We got 2 more minutes.
serve.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a waitress and we bus and we do everything. And I didn't want to come either. And my 10-year-old daughter was here for the first time.
Awesome. That's a victory.
Goes to Catholic church with her dad, which is fine.
Yeah.
But she's with me the most of our already.
Mm-hmm.
And she was tired because she didn't want me at the gym. And she wanted to we have to go to church. And I'm like, I said, God's going to give me the energy and we're going to church. Once you get here, I mean, you know, you want that break or whatever, but once you get here, you at least I become so filled, that is my break.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That like, and I just come away with it, like, oh man, I just really needed that, you know, that's
Yeah.
my break.
But it doesn't feel like it in the moment, right? But once you come, you know what I mean? What a difference. What a difference. Here's the last point. We got one more minute until 7:45. The last point I really had on my heart to challenge you guys with when it comes to spending time in his presence. One of the things is being intentional. Mary was intentional about his presence. Some of the most intimate moments that I have with my wife are not the moments where we're running around doing stuff together. Those, I mean, awesome. Thankfully, I get to rush around with one of the coolest girls on the face of this planet. That's a blast. I have fun with her. But the moments that I take time, I mean, and really focus in, I'm going to engage and I'm going to dive in to, so where are you at right now? What's going on? And we just sit down and we enjoy each other's company and we just talk. And there's no distractions. It's just me and her. Those are the best times that we get to spend with each other. So for us as believers, one of the hardest times because our flesh is fighting us, but we also are a spiritual being. We have a spirit that desires that closeness, that I'm trying to think, the intimacy with God. It desires that intimacy. And that's where our source of peace is at. That's where our source of love is found. That's where we're found. That's where, I'm thinking of a car right now. Because I used to drive my first car, I drove it with the wheel like this because I didn't have any clue what an alignment was. You know what I mean? And I'm driving it down the road. I drove it for 138,000 miles with the wheel like that because I never knew what an alignment was. It was my first car. And sometimes that's how we are in our Christian walk, right? We're driving the thing nonstop. And we're not taking the time to take it to the mechanic to twist a couple bolts, and then we'll save gas mileage, our wheels will last longer, everything will be better down the road. Instead of being a stubborn punk like me and saying, oh, I'm going to drive it, I don't care, I don't want to take the time or take the money to invest in. So let's focus in. I really feel like that word was from the Lord, and I really feel like it's like, man, I've got some bolts I want to turn. And I don't think for a second that I don't want to turn them. I don't want to help you because it's not true. Because it's not your ability and how much you've done, but it's because I care for you. Let me help you. So I just pray right now. Let's just take a second and pray. Father, we lift up our hearts to you. The healer, the doctor, the mechanic. Father, we're in the world full of priority and busyness, when there's so many things pulling at our attention. My heart's cry right now is, as a congregation, as a church in Newaygo County, we would have a room full of people that would be willing to admire the heart of Mary in this passage and just sit at your feet. What are you teaching us? What do you want to speak to us? What does your written word say? What does your spoken word say? Father, and giving us the desire and teach us the value of, in this crazy world we live in, choosing to focus and hone our hearts in on you and just abiding in you and your presence. And every day is another day that we can grow and discover and learn more about you. That we would take our eyes off the situations around us, all the circumstances, the mountains that we're faced with, and we can choose to focus in and seek the kingdom first and you above all else. Father, I just thank you that you are a God that partners with us in this life. You don't leave us stranded by ourselves. You walk through the desert with the Israelites. You cared for them. And guess what? You've partnered with us and given us your Holy Spirit today. You never leave us. You never forsake us. You will be with us always, and we choose to praise you for that. We love you, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Thank you guys so much for being here today.